I've wanted to share about working vacations because this is something our family has done for the last 7 years. And I write about kind of being different places often during the summer, and I'll post things on my blog about those. And I'll have different blog posts or blog series about going on trips. But I haven't really explained how we do working vacations so much. Well, I'm currently on a working vacation. This topic came up again to me. I was like, I really should write about this. So I'm just going to share it with you in a video and tell you how it's worked for our family, what working vacations are like for us, why we do them, how we do them, places we've gone, tips we've learned, in case this might be something you would be interested in doing or maybe could do in your own life. My theme for this talk is inexpensive working vacations because that's kind of the mode that we operate. 7 years ago, we became self employed and location independent in our work. That's when we moved from the United States back to Canada. And location independent just means we don't have to be at the place in a city or a particular place to do work. And specifically, this applies to my husband, who is a web developer and a web developer, software engineer, and recently he became full-time employed, but still works remotely, still works from home. So we still have the location independence part, and he's employed, but the same principles apply in terms of working vacations, being able to go places and work in those places. For myself, in the last 7 years, I haven't been working in a committed kind of to an employer or a specific project or something where I had to be showing up regularly to do this job, whether it's for myself or for somebody else. That's recently changed, but my work was more fluid, and sometimes I didn't work much at all in terms of income earning work. Other times I was just doing a project or I was working with Damien. It was really part-time, and it was very subject to family life and what was going on. So I had a lot of flexibility because my main jobs have been homeschooling and homemaking and doing home stuff. So my job has always had a lot of flexibility, and now I am working part-time, and it still has flexibility. Okay. So why would we take a working vacation? Why not just take vacations? Just go somewhere and where you don't have to work. Okay, so we were self-employed, and when I say we, I mean mostly my husband, and I'm still self-employed. But anyways, so being self-employed, we never were able to set aside enough funds to be able to take off a chunk of time and not work during that time. The only exception to this is the Appalachian Trail, which I will get to a little later. But it was basically we could take working vacations or we couldn't take any kind of travel and vacations. We just couldn't swing it financially, where you had to save amount of funds to basically have that paid vacation experience that you have with an employer. We couldn't do it. But we still wanted to do things and have experiences, and the whole reason we became location independent in our work was so that we could just take life wherever and have experiences in those places. So working vacations have been the best option for us with our available resources, with the kind of work that we do and that Damien does, and also with our people network, which I'm going to explain in a future section. It just basically came down to a working vacation is a travel experience we can afford and that we can fit into our lives and that we can do. If you can take time off work and just take an honest to goodness vacation, that's awesome. We're actually doing that for the first time this year, now that Damien has a full-time job, but we're using that to go backpacking. because it's hard to work and backpack, which we've done on the Appalachian Trail. So we're using that vacation time to go backpacking, and then we're fitting in other things in working vacation type scenarios. Okay, so where have we gone on working vacations? In the last 7 years, which have roughly corresponded to also our kids growing into teenager years and being teenagers. We have 3 kids, and the last 7 years, which have been the years that we have been location independent and work, have also been kind of their teenager years and their more independent exploring type years, at least for our family. So in these years, we've taken regular trips once or twice a year to Nova Scotia, where my parents live. We visit them. We stay for 1 to 2 weeks. Visit local beaches. The beaches in Nova Scotia are amazing. We go hiking. We enjoy maritime life and just the beautiful place where they live. We went backpacking with them one time. I mean, this is just like visiting family, but we have family that live in beautiful places, so which we love. So this is something regularly that we do. A few years ago, 6 or 5 years ago, we took a 3-week road trip, down to the northeastern mid-Atlantic U.S. region, which is a familiar stomping grounds for us. But our destination was a Christian music festival. This is the thing you do with teenagers. And that was like in Pennsylvania, that was the destination. And on the way there and on the way back, we visited friends in New Hampshire and in Maine. We did New York City. We did some backpacking when we were up in Maine. So we fit a lot of different things into that experience. So another big trip that we've done is our AT through hike, which doesn't count as a vacation in any sense of the word. At least for me, it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. And we produced a video series, Well Hiking, and that video series is available for anybody to watch now. There will be a link in the comments. In the past 3 years, we've done some significant road trips that have been like kind of like the culmination or the quintessential working vacation experiences for us. So we did a 6-week road trip out to Western United States and Canada, and the destination there was Montana and then Alberta. And just to give context, I haven't done this yet, sorry, we live in Montreal. So we drove from Montreal all the way to Montana and then up to Alberta and then back home again. So that was a 6-week road trip. And then last summer we did a 9-week long road trip. Major destinations there were Colorado, California, up north into British Columbia, east a little bit to Alberta, and then back to Montreal. And then, of course, seeing a lot of places in between. But we did have some definite destinations in that trip, which I'm going to get into the how we do working road trips, how we make it work so that we're actually working. Because in all this driving, and we were driving across the continent, we have to have times where we're working also. We are currently on a week-long working vacation in Franconia Notch, New Hampshire. We're in the mountains where we love to be, near the Appalachian Trail. And so this is another working vacation experience. So how do we do these trips? How are we able to take 9-week, 6-week, 3-week, 1-week trips to places that we want to go? And on the cheap, I'll add, this is part of our experience and part of the way we do things. We do this really inexpensively. So first of all, how we do this is that we are location independent in our work. We, mostly Damien, myself now also, we don't need to be at a certain place. Wherever we can get internet connection, we can work. So that's the first thing that makes this work for us. Also, I would say personality. Being able to just work in many different places, which have included cars, coffee shops, small spaces, other people's homes, like a variety of situations. Being able to do that, not everyone can just adjust to that super easily. And I will say that Damien especially has an incredible ability to tune out a lot of distractions. At home, his home office is right in the middle of our living room. It's like smack dab in the middle of where a lot of things happen. Granted, we don't have little tiny children that are making lots of noise, but it's in the middle of where we live and do a lot of our living. So, um, to be able to work anywhere might take a certain kind of personality. Also, you have to be flexible and not hyper routine dependent. So if work for you is like tied to a specific, like this is how it looks for me all the time to do my work, even if it's remote, it might not, what I'm presenting at least might not work for you. And for myself, I'm actually a different story in terms of the routine and the flexibility. I need more routine and I am less flexible than Damien. And so we've figured out some things as we've gone in that regard, and I'll be sharing a little bit of that later. We also do this very practically on the cheap. How we're able to take 9 weeks and go somewhere, or 6 weeks and go somewhere. People have said, wow, that must be amazing to take that much time off work and to have that kind of money to find places to stay. It's not like that at all. First of all, we are working, which is why this is called a working vacation. Which is why I'm talking about working vacations. And we also spend hardly any money on accommodations. I will explain how we have done that in my next point. So we're having these working vacations, being able to work remotely, being able to work with flexibility and that kind of thing, staying places cheaply. And another thing that has made this possible for us is having a good car for long road trips. So our two of our major working vacations, actually 3 were longer road trips, but 2 were like the 6 weeks and the 9 weeks out west. And we needed a good car for those trips. And that is for sure a cost, but it's also one of the things that makes it possible for us to do this. We are a 1-car family, and we upgraded our vehicle to have space to do these kind of things. And so our car payment is also our vacation fund. It's an investment into just our regular life, but also it's the investment for our vacations. And so yeah, our most significant travel cost for these working vacations or any other thing is our car payment. We have had no flights since our children were toddlers. We haven't flown anywhere as a family since they were little, and could basically, one of them could sit on my lap. And flights are just not an option financially for our family, and we chose to kind of put the money into things like having a car that would be reliable for us in our everyday life and get us places that we wanted to see. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about finding cheap accommodations, because for us, what's made working vacations possible and traveling during the summer and going places and seeing some amazing things is that we are able to do it on the cheap. And accommodations can be a really big cost. So in all of our working vacations and almost all of our travel, with the exception of maybe going to like personal conferences or some other minor exceptions or special extended family events, we find really cheap accommodations. I've written about cheap accommodations in general, things like Airbnb and tenting, that kind of thing, which we do a lot of, but not so much for working vacations, which I'll explain a little later. And I will leave a link for that. For all of our working vacations, we use our resource network and connections for finding places to stay. So what is our resource network and our connections? Well, it's friends and relatives, it's online acquaintances, people we know in person or just online. We know quite a few people online, and we have stayed some pretty amazing places because of those connections that we have. So when we are staying with people on our travels, so in this case, working vacation travels, we we find it's best to stay like with people if they're actually there. If we're staying in their home and they're there, like max 4 to 5 nights. Um, Most times we don't reach that max. We might just spend a couple nights as we're driving through, or spend 3 or 4 nights there as home base if they're there. If it's like we're coming into their space and sharing kind of their normal space with them, that's about the max that we can do. So our ideal scenario for working vacations is like a full week or a multi-week stay at one place with some measure of privacy and independence for us, and we're not in someone else's hair, and we can just kind of relax and be in our own space. Find a groove for working and also for fun and exploring, and kind of find your little routine there. So that's the ideal when we are kind of landing somewhere that we're going to stay for a while, to find that kind of place. A few years ago, 2, 3 years ago, we were in Montana. We were able to stay in a friend's Airbnb, friends that we met online, in their Airbnb, and we helped out a little bit with that. And we also set up a tent outside, and we were able to stay there for free. And that was like our home base. But on the way there, we've stayed on people's living room floors, in their guest bedrooms. We've pitched tents in their yard. We stayed last summer on a sailboat in a marina at Berkeley. That was for 3 weeks. That was through another online work connection Damien had. And this week we're at a condo in a ski village in the New Hampshire mountains. Actually, all 3 of those major accommodations were found through online connections and online work connections specifically. We know a lot of people online around North America, and we don't feel embarrassed to stay at their place or ask them if we can stay at their place or inquire about these things, and we don't feel like we're taking advantage of people's hospitality or some great thing that they have and that they're not using at the time. We don't feel like we're taking advantage of them because we do the same. So on every long trip that we've taken in the last 3 years, we've opened up our Montreal apartment for families and travelers to stay for free or at a very low cost. And we love to share our home in Montreal with people. It's a great place. It's a great location. It's like a pay it forward system. We've never done an actual swap where we've gone to someone's house and while we were there, they've come to our house. It's more like people have shown us generosity and we just show generosity to other people. And it's worked really well for us. The last option that we use for working vacation accommodations is camping. And a camping situation is the last option because it's hard to be productive and find Wi-Fi and get all the stuff done you need to accomplish when you're working or trying to work nearly full-time and doing tent camping specifically, which is what we do. We use the camping option and the camping means of accommodation mostly just on our getting places. So when we've done longer road trips, we will camp. We'll have a day of driving, and then we'll camp that night, and then we'll drive the next day and camp, and then maybe arrive at the place that we're going to stay at for 5 days or a week. So camping is like the on the way there. We did have one experience in Washington State last summer where we stayed in North Bend, found a cheap camping spot in the National Forest, beautiful, in the mountains and the trees and by a river. We did camp there, and then we went into town to work and using the library and the coffee shops. And that was just a make-do, making it work situation. It's not ideal. And it was a lovely place to stay. So mostly just as a summary for how we find inexpensive accommodations is that we have connections with people. We meet a lot of people online. People have resources to share. We find out what resources people have to share, and we share our own resources with other people. Like tips for finding these kind of accommodations. Everyone's life is different, and people have different connections and different opportunities. be friendly, be a person that gets to know other people, share what you have. Part of this for us is that we are always willing to share our Montreal apartment with people. Be low maintenance. When we go someplace, we are low maintenance people, and we tell people like we can sleep on your floor. Um, and that's like mostly for the when we just need a place to land as we're driving through to a place that we are going to be staying for a while. But really, because we tent and camp and have all kinds of camping gear, we can easily sleep on somebody's floor, and we don't need a special space. Um, and then also, it's a good rule, as much as possible, leave something better than you found it. And I live by that rule when I'm going places and when I'm staying in other people's homes or their vacation properties or their boats or whatever. I always try to leave something better than I found it. So, having said that, about like being flexible and low maintenance and all of that, what works best for at the actual, like, when you're having to work, what works best for us is to minimize the transitions, which because that's the part that is both difficult for me emotionally. It's pretty stressful for me, transitions, and also in terms of just trying to get work done and figuring things out. What works best is that we make the transitions shorter and stay in one place longer, and use home base to explore then on the evenings and the weekends or during the week. One of us, usually me, will do stuff with the kids, touristy stuff, cheap touristy stuff in the area that often involves exercise and outdoors and hiking. Um, so uh, we have found that like trying to squeeze in work and moving from place to place like every 2 to 3 days is really stressful. Damien could probably do it, but I can't do it. I just find the coming and going just too stressful. That's one of the things that we really try to do is find a space we can stay for longer and minimize those transitions. And then also a space we can stay for longer, but our own space. So we don't want to crash on somebody's living room floor for a week and try to do working and have a vacation feel for our family. So it's uh, like the examples that I have are staying at our friend's Airbnb, and we were there actually. It was an Airbnb with other rooms and other people were staying, but that was the feel of it. It was like staying at an Airbnb and you'd meet other people from other countries and travelers, but we were there for a while and we kind of made it our own, and it was a great situation for us. We stayed on a sailboat for 3 weeks in the marina. That was our own space, tight, small, wonderful, very cozy. By minimizing the amount of transitions and by having our own space for a chunk of time, we're more productive in our work because we do have to work, and specifically Damien has to work. We're more productive and it's less stress for me, which means it's less stress for everyone. So, how to work while traveling and vacationing? Like, how do you actually work? How do you do that when you need to drive someplace and when you want to actually have a vacation feel? Because we do want to make it kind of vacation like also. It's not just work. But because we're working somewhere else in a different place, it has a different feel and it does have a more vacation feel. So in our family, Damien usually keeps to a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday schedule as much as possible. It depends on the trip, but that leaves the evenings and the weekends free, and sometimes random afternoons he'll take off also. On big road trips, which we did in the last 2 years, we do like the 2 to 3 days of driving, where we drive like 12 hours a day to get across the country. 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours, like in 3 days, to get from Montreal to Montana, for example, or Montreal to Colorado. We do those drives on the weekends, which are the non-working hours for us. And that way we get somewhere, and we settle then for that week, and we fit in the vacationy stuff on the evenings, and we are in a different place, and that has a vacation feel to it for us. And so we try to keep those driving transitions and the big movement to those non-working times of our week. However, Damien can work in the car using the hotspot on his phone and getting Wi-Fi. He can work for hours that way. I can't. So I drive and he works while we're driving. In previous years, I was not working like I am now, and now I'm working part time. It's still just very part time, but I do have to work while I am um, on vacation. But my work has always been to manage our financial life, which involves the rental house and just the bills at home and just all the things, all that paperwork and stuff. I do that on the road and all the online banking stuff. So that takes some time. Anything related to our house sitters, correspondence, I'm taking care of that. I'm also homemaking in a new place. So the groceries, figuring out where to get the groceries, buying the groceries, and making the meals. Usually my kids help cook at home, but when we're doing these, I do all the cooking. Gives them a little bit of vacation, and I make really simple stuff. It's not a problem. I don't mind the cooking as much as I do at home. So I do all the cooking and I do the laundry, which often involves having to figure out where to get laundry done, like laundromats and things like that. So that takes time. And then I'm also doing stuff with the kids, which adds the vacation element. It's a real privilege that I'm able to do that with them. So visiting Yellowstone. When we rode in California, taking them into San Francisco for the day and visiting Marin County, doing hikes, doing touristy stuff. I need more routine and stability to get into work mode. And so a working vacation for me, in the sense where I'm working for somebody else and not working for homemaking purposes, I need to have routine and stability to be in a work mode where I'm trying to produce and work for somebody else versus just working for my family and taking care of the homemaking and making home type of stuff. And so our current working vacation, we're in a place for a week, and I'm able to easily do things like laundry because there's laundry here, and I'm close to the grocery store, so I can do the homemaking tasks quite easily and then spend time working. So my work has to be a bit more flexible and fit into the home stuff that I do, and I find it's easiest for me to do that in a situation where I have some stability. So I guess in summary, in conclusion, we've done only North American working vacations. We've never left the continent. And we haven't done traveling around the world with our kids. That's just not something possible for us financially. But we've had very cool experiences while spending minimal amounts on accommodations. So our main costs in this kind of thing, in this kind of traveling, has been gas. Which when we travel in the States, gas is cheaper here, so that's good. We have a car payment, which we'd have anyway at this point in our lives. Once the kids became teens, we needed the space and we needed a bigger and more reliable vehicle. So we have that payment anyways, and it's like a vacation fund almost also. And we spend extra in groceries. We rarely eat out, but I lose the scale of economies of scale. I basically can't buy things as much in bulk and don't know the best prices and the places to go. So groceries are more expensive than my at-home grocery bill, but that's the main big costs with inexpensive accommodation, and we don't spend a lot more on our trips. That's how we take working vacations. It's been a real gift for our family to be able to do this, so that we've had some really interesting experiences with our kids, and I've been really thankful to be able to do this with them. And if you have questions, you can ask those. That's all I need to say. Thanks.